if you can imagine all the different emotions that you have on a weekly or daily or yearly basis, you can probably run the gamut from really, really bad and sad to really, really joyful and wonderful. So all these emotions, bless you.
Nobody can hear me. I've got my microphone off. I'm doing all my sneezing off air.
Yes, I know this, but I saw you sneezing, and I thought I had to say bless you.
Thank you so much. I'll go back with my microphone closed.
So you can imagine the entire gamut of emotions from the worst to the best. And let's say the worst is 0 and the best is 10. So on this scale of 0 to 10, excuse me, here you are throughout your day and your week and your month and your year, experiencing some of these emotions all the time. Now, typically, you're not going to experience the really low, 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 terrible emotions and the really high, high, wonderful, mind-uplifting emotions very much. You're probably going to be somewhere in a middling area. Let's say on that scale of 0 to 10, you might find yourself in the vicinity of 5 most of the time, which, and then, you'll oscillate up to 7, maybe even 8 every so often, and you'll go spin down to maybe 3 every so often. But on an average, you're probably in the sector of 5. That's not a pretty place to be.
No, it's sort of blasé, isn't it?
Yeah,
sort of...
it more than blasé, I would say it's blah.
Okay.
Not
so nice.
It is not an uplifting place to be. It is not a place where I could ask you, for example, how do you feel energetically? And when I say energetically, I don't mean how is your energy for going and running a marathon. I'm talking about the energy inside your being that allows you to feel excited about something and to want to go and do whatever it is you're planning to do, and to feel the sparkle in your eyes and the enthusiasm that you're going to be going and doing whatever it is you're going to be doing. When I ask you how often you feel that way, you probably will look at me and maybe if I'm lucky, you'll say something like, well, on the weekend.
Yeah.
Or maybe in the evening, especially if you're still young and single and you're dating. And so in the evening. But very few people will tell you that they feel this way a lot. Right. And that doesn't mean that people feel awful. It just means that people are used to being in that kind of a 5-ish blah place, and recognizing that there are moments where simply life then begets, a lot better. But those moments are like vacations or weekends or, when you're going out with someone special or something along those lines.
What a sad way to live like 3/4 of your life in the blah mode and only like a 1/4 in the happy mode.
Yes, but, lest our listeners, Brenda, think that you and I are immortals that are not living on this plane that I'm talking about. Actually, this is the way I believe almost everybody lives until they actually begin to become aware.
Okay.
So awareness is a huge factor in this, and that doesn't mean that one is not happy. It simply means that one makes do with what is, and then all those moments during the day where one falls off this let's say you live at a 6, I'm using the 5 in an arbitrary fashion here, but let's say your typical life runs around a 6. So then you fall off your 6 a little bit and maybe you hit the 5 or 4.5, but then in the evening or on the weekend, you're back up to a 7. So you notice those high points a lot more than the low ones, but because you're so used to the lower ones, you don't realize, just like seeing through somewhat smudgy glasses, people often don't realize their glasses are smudgy until someone comes up to them and says, hey, you need to clean your glasses. How can you see?
Exactly.
And so if we live our lives this way, we are basically accustomed to sort of being on that level, and that level is not freedom. Because there, although you accept and although you're accustomed to it, it isn't living the fullness and richness of a life that you could be living.
Okay.
So we come back to why emotions can be helpful in this. And I guess we're going to have to leave that until after the news.
We're going to have a very short break. Gabriella.
Okay, so here we are with our emotions.
Okay.
And I spoke a moment ago about this continuum of different emotions that one can feel, from the really bad to the really good. And I use that in order to explain where most of us spend most of our time. But I also use that the idea of the continuum for you to actually think, okay, the emotions probably that I most recognize are perhaps anger, perhaps frustration, perhaps fear, perhaps jealousy, envy. You know, this is now becoming very personal. So you are the one who kind of has to think, what are the ones I respond to most readily, or the ones that most pop up in my life? And in order for you to get to the point that I'm trying to lead you to in this particular show today, I would like to suggest that for, maybe a week, that's not so long, 7 days, you keep a little emotion diary in which maybe 3 or 4 times a day, maybe at your meal times or just after your meal times, you write down in bullet form fashion. So you're not going to be writing a lot. You just make a little note with a few words of the different emotions that you've had during the course of the morning. You could do that just around lunchtime. Perhaps when you have your breakfast, you might write down anything that has happened prior to breakfast, or anything that happened at night after you did your last one. And then at lunch, as I say, the one for during the morning, if you have a coffee sometime in the afternoon, merienda style here in Spain. I love merienda.
Yes, it's so nice, isn't it? Something to just keep you going.
Yeah, and you can only do merienda if you do a late dinner, but I love merienda. Yeah. So anyway, you make another few notes if anything has happened. Not so much what happened as the emotions in you that you perceived. Never mind if it was somebody's fault. That's not the case. That's not important right now. All we're interested in is you catching your emotions. And then at night again, maybe after dinner, and this whole process, each time you jot this down, isn't going to take you more than a minute or two. So don't think that we're taking out a huge chunk of your time.
You don't have
here.
to write a diary.
No. And then you keep doing this for about 7 days. And then you have a look at it and see where these emotions have taken you. Because clearly, if many of your emotions have been anger, or many of them have been despondency, or there's an expression in Mexico where they say "ni modo,"
What does that mean?
Which means, well, there's just nothing I'm ever going to be able to do about it. I guess in psychological terminology, we might call it learned hopelessness.
Okay.
And learned hopelessness is a term that really is used a lot, because it's something that takes people normally a little bit down the road to depression, because they have come to the conclusion, whether they are children or adults, that whatever it is they're trying to achieve or do or make or see in their outer world is just not going to happen. And so, ni modo, because it's the government, or it's my husband or my wife or my kids or my job or my boss, or the family I was born in, the lack of what I got education wise, etc.
It's funny how we encapsulate this, though, in very neat little ways to say it, I think, in all cultures, so we can pass it down to our children so easily.
Well, it's a little bit like what you and I were talking about during the break, where you mentioned, with all your wonderful interests in adoption, that it turns out that you have begun to see that there are, thank God, some people now who are coming out with all the positive studies, or the studies on healthy adoption situations and families.
All the things you can do for your kids, which whether they've been adopted late in life, which a lot of people think is impossible. You adopt a 10-year-old and you can't have any effect on that. Well, you can.
Exactly. And the fact that you are now seeing that the literature that is coming out, in the adoption literature that is coming out, that is talking about this positive type of psychology with regards to adoption, rather than looking at the dysfunctional cases only, and trying to organize the whole world of adoption from the perspective of the etiology